They told me refinancing would be easy. They promised lower payments, a lump sum for repairs, and a cleaner monthly schedule that would make the house breathe again. In the warm spill of a Saturday afternoon, the idea of a slightly better life seemed sensible. My name is David. I am 52 years old, and I have always believed that ordinary steady work is the foundation of a good life. I build things that stay standing. I fix things that break. I learned to measure twice and cut once. Contracts are a different kind of structure, but they are still built by hands, and a bad hand shows in its work. The broker met us at a small cafe with windows that looked over the town green. He spoke as if he had been a neighbor for years, and his smile moved fast. He used phrases polished for comfort, market opportunity, low fixed rate, roll in some equity, and he pointed at small clauses like they were friendly suggestions. Anna liked the idea of new tile and a quieter kitchen, a place for bread and coffee rather than a stack of boxes. We listened, signed where the broker suggested, and left feeling lighter than we had a week before. The closing packet looked neat and official, and we tucked it into a drawer like any other small promise. 3 months later, a letter arrived from a servicer I had never heard of. It said a second mortgage had been recorded against our property, and arrears had accumulated. Arrears. The word landed like a small stone, and the light in the kitchen felt thinner when I compared public records to our closing packet. Panic is a blunt instrument that spends energy. I preferred method. I ordered copies of every document tied to our parcel from the county recorder, and I set them side by side with the closing packet. I compared dates, stamps, signatures, and the angles of letters until differences resolved into a pattern. I labeled a folder clearance, and I made photocopies of every page, writing notes on the margins, notary name, stamp number, fold marks. Paper keeps whatever you put into it, and it remembers what people later wish to forget. I took the photocopy of the notarized page to Tom, the veteran notary who had been working in the county for decades. He looked at the ink with an old man's patience and then said, softly, that the stroke did not read like my hand. He showed me how an honest signature begins with a natural hesitation at the start, a slight variation in pressure as the pen moves, and small tremors only a breathing hand produces. His modest authority turned suspicion into something tangible. The bank at first offered a practiced line. Assignments happen. Loans move to different servicers. True enough, but a legitimate assignment leaves an evident chain and original documents. I asked the bank for the assignment paperwork and the chain of title documents. The person at the desk promised to pull records and call me back. The more questions I asked, the less comfortable the smiles became. I filed complaints with the State Consumer Protection Division and called the Real Estate Licensing Board. I hired a consumer attorney who specialized in predatory lending. That was the first time the fight turned from private worry into public procedure. The attorney sent certified letters demanding originals and a preservation notice to block collection actions. Legal engines move slowly, but they build a wall once the bolts are tightened. Predators prefer silence. They rely on the quietness of trusting neighborhoods. So I asked the Homeowners Association to circulate a neutral note asking people to check titles if they'd had recent refinancing. 2 neighbors responded with their own oddities. One woman in her 70s had a similar stamped assignment on her title and had been hounded by a collection agency until she paid a fee to appease them. A young family down the street had been told their payments were late despite records that showed a new loan within acceptable bounds. The pattern was not a coincidence. It was a method. The broker's office tried conciliatory moves, a call, a note, a suggestion that clerical error explained everything. They offered a quiet settlement in exchange for confidentiality, and counsel warned that settlements can be traps that hide a pattern. We refused silence. We wanted a full rescission and public correction. The traveling notary's log turned out to be crucial. According to his entries, he had been notarizing in another county on the day the questioned stamp had been used. A notary stamp used out of time and place is more than a misstep. It suggests manufacturing. The ledger of small facts sharpened into a credible case. I compiled evidence and brought it to a local reporter who had written on housing issues before. He looked at the side-by-side pages and asked who benefited and where the money had gone. He published a clear piece that showed the documents and explained how assignments can be misused. When the public saw the images, the broker's sheen faded. The story generated a ripple. 2 more homeowners came forward with similar notarized pages on their titles. And people in other towns called to say similar brokers had knocked on their doors. The pattern grew beyond our block, into a map of small lender networks and shell servicers. The document examiner's report was measured and clear. Inconsistent pin pressure, signs of tracing, and irregular notary use. Those technical phrases move a claim from clerical error into possible forgery. The examiner compared exemplars of my signature with the question signature and mapped the pressure variations across loops and strokes. He showed how tracing tends to smooth the natural tremor of a hand and creates bears of uniform pressure that a genuine signature does not have. When such a report lands in court, it gives facts a voice. Hearing rooms are slow because law favors precision over speed. The judge listened to testimony from a notary who confirmed our closing signatures and a traveling notary who denied notarizing the question page. Our attorney filed motions demanding originals and an accounting of payments. The judge issued temporary injunctive relief, while chain of title evidence was produced. The preservation notice prevented any foreclosing action, a crucial pause that kept our home out of immediate danger. The county recorder put the entry under review and began a limited audit of assignments, recorded within the suspicious window. Public pressure mattered. After the article, neighbors who had once shrugged at paperwork started to look. The recorder's office could not ignore a cluster of odd stamps and fast-moving assignments. Regulators issued inquiries, and the broker's license faced review. The State Consumer Protection Office opened a file, and the local county auditor flagged multiple assignments that funneled into the same cluster of anonymous servicers. Institutional inertia shifted toward examination. The predator's operating landscape narrowed, where official attention rose. There were personal costs. Legal fees became a ledger line we could not ignore. Nights grew short, and small domestic tensions surfaced as Anna and I argued about whether the fight was worth the expense. Our son worried about tuition. We borrowed against a small certificate to pay retainers and ate simple meals while the paperwork stacked. The toll was both financial and emotional because a house is not an abstraction. It is the place where children study and couples sleep. Protecting it takes resources and will. The broker's counsel tried to portray the matter as an administrative misunderstanding and offered to reissue paperwork quietly. They suggested a corrected assignment in exchange for a limited release and a non-disclosure agreement. Our attorney advised sternly against that route. A quiet settlement would leave the system intact. Predators count on settlements because they conceal method and permit the pattern to continue. We insisted on rescission, the official voiding of the recorded instrument, and public confirmation that the lien was invalid. We wanted the title restored in the public record, not a private accord that left future victims exposed. Forensic reports and cross-referenced notary logs strengthened the motion. The notary who had actually notarized our closing authenticated the original closing packet. The traveling notary swore he had not applied his stamp on the question page. The document examiner explained tracing marks and atypical pin pressure on the second instrument. Those facts are not colorful, they are legal gravity. The judge, reading the reports, issued a rescission order. The lien was voided and the servicer ordered to withdraw any claim. The county recorder published the correction and the title returned to our name without encumbrance. The victory was precise, a cold correction of the public ledger. The legal victory rippled outward. The recorder instituted tighter authentication checks for assignments and cross-referencing for notary stamps. The state published guidance on verifying assignment documentation. The licensing board opened an inquiry into the broker's filings, and several microlenders faced audits for loose controls and weak verification processes. A few criminal referrals were made to prosecutors where evidence indicated deliberate forgery. It is quiet work, an auditor's memo, a revised checklist, a new box on a filing form. But these administrative measures make it harder for predators to repeat the method without leaving traceable footprints. Neighbors brought casseroles and apologies. A man who had been skeptical at first knocked on the door with a piece of cake and said simply, "Thank you for what you did." Those domestic reconciliations felt like seals on the work we had done. People who had been drawn in by a confident voice described how official-looking paper convinced them to stop asking questions. We invited them in, showed them the folder, and explained the small technical things that reveal a manufactured document once you know what to look for. Sharing knowledge turned isolation into community defense. If you suspect odd paperwork, the checklist is practical. Copy everything immediately. Order land records from your county recorder and compare dates to your closing packet. Check notary logs and consult a veteran notary for exemplar comparisons. File preservation notices and injunctions to stop collection actions while the facts are reviewed. Inform your neighbors. Predators thrive on solitude and speed. Transparency is a weapon. Do not accept a quick settlement with a non-disclosure clause because it may place a bandage over a pattern that will strike the next family. Practical lessons seep into daily life. We put originals in a safe deposit box. We kept digital backups in a secured cloud. And we reinforced a habit of checking the county index whenever a neighbor mentioned refinancing. I taught my son how to look up a parcel number and read assignment notations. He sits now with an ease that belies how hard we fought. He can tell a certified copy from a photocopy, and he knows where to call if something seems off. Small practices of scrutiny protect against large losses because predators expect impatience and politeness. The local reporter who covered the story reminded me that journalism can amplify a pattern into attention that regulators cannot ignore. When the article ran, dozens of readers called the newsroom to ask if a friendly broker had come to their door. A legal clinic offered pro bono hours for seniors who feared predatory refinancing. The recorder's office began a pilot program to cross-check notary stamps across counties. These institutional shifts were slow, but they are durable. New routines and checks survive beyond any single case. There were moments of unexpected humanity. A retired postal inspector spent a morning sitting at my kitchen table, tracing email headers and server timestamps because he was curious. His pattern finding linked several assignments to a cluster of shell companies. A neighbor who taught bookkeeping for a living helped us trace fee distributions in public filings. People contributed time in small ways because the problem touched ordinary trust. That makes the response communal rather than purely legal. The fight was not glamorous. It involved long waits for certified mail, forum calls with lawyers, and afternoons at the county recorder's office. It involved an anxious morning when the county clerk said the file was under review, and a quiet, sharp relief when the temporary injunction blocked any forced sale. Small procedural wins accumulate: a preservation notice, a forensic report, a judge's order. The cumulative weight of those measures breaks the pretense of legality that predators rely on. One hearing stands out because of its particular ordinariness. The courtroom had pale walls and a list of dockets. But when our attorney laid the question page next to our original closing and the notary testified to the times recorded in his log, the effect was simple and clarifying. The judge asked direct, plain questions. Was this signed in your presence? Can the servicer produce original assignment documents? The answers were factual, not theatrical, and the judge's pen rendered a precise remedy. After the rescission, the broker's license was suspended, and several microlenders faced closer scrutiny. The servicers redirected their administrative practices because the recorder's new cross-checks made it more difficult to record spurious assignments without early flagging. A few criminal referrals matured into formal investigations. The change was not perfect, but it was real. The machine that had preyed on quiet trust now had to account for public oversight and to produce originals rather than relying on layers of intermediaries. We replaced the old linoleum in the kitchen with a modest new tile, and the house felt lighter in the ordinary sense again. My son finished his course without the disruption of a foreclosure notice. The nights were quieter, but the memory of the weeks of worry remained, a reservation placed in the mind. I do not tell this to boast. I tell this because the battlefield of ordinary lives is often a table with papers and a lamp burning late. And the defense is not spectacle, but diligence. The place where we found strength was not in a single blow, but in small, persistent acts. Photocopying originals, consulting a veteran notary, hiring counsel, informing neighbors, and inviting a reporter to explain the pattern publicly. The predator's tool is speed and quiet. Our tool was time and witnesses. The pause before a signature is often the most important moment. If someone asks you to sign now and does not welcome a pause, you should see that reluctance as a risk, not an assurance. Years later, neighbors ask me how to check a title, and I show them the recorder's online index and how to spot assignment notations. The county published a short guide for homeowners, explaining chain of title and notarization, and the state posted advisories on verifying assignment documentation. Local legal clinics added sessions focused on refinancing literacy. Little institutional measures grew out of the fight because the evidence was made visible and the community insisted on a change. If you own a home, guard the paperwork the way you guard the people who live in it. Keep originals close, make multiple copies, put certified backups in safe places, and do not sign in haste. When in doubt, ask for a certified copy of the recorded instrument, demand to see the chain of title, and consult counsel. Tell your neighbors, predators count on isolation. The peace of a home is not incidental. It is the product of steady attention and practical insistence on transparency. We saved what we built, not by fury but by focus. We protected a place where children return and where small domestic moments accumulate into a life. The legal bills remain a ledger line, so does the new tile. But the larger measure is the quiet that lets a family sleep. The story I tell is not about dramatic revenge. It is about procedural exposure. Evidence outlasts charm. Photocopies, notary logs, and patient counsel will outlast a smile and a promise. Keep copies. Keep witnesses. Keep the quiet acts of stewardship. If something in a document feels wrong, listen to that feeling and look closer. The pause before a signature is sometimes the decisive protection. The house is still ours, and the small rituals of daily life. A kettle that whistles, a child at a homework table, a neighbor bringing over a pie returned, because we made the paperwork speak and insisted that the public ledger match the truth.